Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Dani Smith and I'm excited to welcome you to Husky, Her Story, Trailblazers and Washington Athletics History panel discussion. I am the Assistant Marketing Director and Fan Outreach, and today we will start our virtual event acknowledging the land that our university sits on. The University of Washington acknowledges the past and present Coastal Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Women's History Month is a month-long celebration of women's accomplishments and contributions that in celebration of this month of March. We celebrate and honor women across all nationalities, races, gender identities, sexual orientations, abilities, ethnicities, ages, and identities. Now let's meet today's panelists. Let's start with Jen Cohen, Director of Athletics, Erin O'Connell, Deputy Athletic Director and Senior Women Administrator, Elise Groves, Interim Chief Information Officer, Dr. Ashley Austin, Team Physician, Gertrude Peoples, Founding Director of UW Student Athletic Academic Services, and Yaz Farooq, Women's Head Rowing Coach. We are very excited to give this platform to two Husky student athletes who are blazing the trail with the next generation of women. Sachi Yamamoto, student athlete, women's rowing, and Haley Herberg, student athlete for women's cross country and track and field. With that, let's get it started.
Thanks for the intro, Dani. We're really excited to be here with you all. To start it off, we all know that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those that came before us. So before the panel, each of you submitted the name of a woman whose shoulders that you're standing upon. Because not everyone might not have seen the campaign online, I'm going to ask each of you to tell me a little bit about the woman and what she means to you, starting with Yaz.
Well, the woman I picked was my first coach at Wisconsin. Her name was Jane Ludwig. And what she taught us was the value of the women who had come before us and the road that they had paved for us. And the other big lesson I learned from her was about what incredible collaborators women are, and especially in a sport like rowing, where it's not just about pulling together, it's about pulling for one another. That takes on a whole new meaning. So Jane and her teammates had stripped in front of the athletic director to get a locker room. They followed the plan that the Yale women had done. It made the New York Times because they were looking for equality for women's rowers, and they didn't have a locker room at the time. And for us to know their history and what it took for us to have the things that we have today, the lesson that I learned from her was this: we need to remember these stories and we need to pass them on, because that's how we have what we have now.
Thanks, Yaz. Gertrude, you're next.
Sachi, you can stop her real quick. We got to make sure she's unmuted. Gertrude, can you hit unmute for us? Thanks.
I'm trying to undo it. Did I do it?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. And she actually was one of the tutors in the department as well, but her name is Blanche Whitney, and I couldn't have survived without her.
Awesome. Thank you, Gertrude. Dr. Austin, you're next.
I'd probably say my mother. She was one of the first Black women in the company where she works, IBM. So she started a long time ago, and she kind of taught me about the value of valuing yourself and your capabilities. Because I think the big goal is, you'll have a lot of times where people doubt your talents and doubt your skills, and doubt you because you're a woman. And I think you have to have the center of you has to be your own self-worth first, and then others will believe in you after that. So if you don't believe in yourself, it's kind of hard to do anything. So she's quite an example for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, Erin, you're up next.
Yes, I chose Dottie Simpson, who I met when I was a student athlete here at Washington. Dottie was a longtime supporter of women's college athletics, specifically Duke and our Huskies. She was a staunch supporter Title IX from the get-go. Growing up, she didn't have the opportunity to be in organized sports, but she always found her way through philanthropy to support that measure, and was a minority owner in the first Seattle pro women's basketball team, the Seattle Reign, and has also been very supportive in the STEM world in opportunities for women and smart students. And she through her lifetime taught me, to absolutely advocate for yourself, but then for those who don't have that opportunity, that you can help support them and along the way, whether it's emotionally or financially.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Erin. Elise, you're next.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely be my mother. She taught me pretty much the definition of hard work. We didn't have it easy growing up, and giving up for her was never an option. I'd come to her and complain about schoolwork I didn't want to do, and she would never coddle me. She was like, you just got to keep moving. You got to keep going. Being a woman, especially being a woman of color, no one's going to coddle you moving forward. And so she really just instilled in me that hard work is pretty much the way you get to where you need to be.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Elise. All right, Jen, who's your woman?
I actually just talked to her 2 nights ago, so I'm going to try not to get emotional about this woman, Henry, Dr. Judy Henry, who is recently retired as the senior women's administrator, former dean of students at Texas Tech University. And 22 years ago, I wrote her a letter applying for the first ever female scholarship endowment for an internship at Texas Tech that was also created by a woman named Janine McCaney, who Judy was best friends with. And it allowed for me to go from Division III athletics to Division I athletics for a female aspiring to be an athletic director. And Judy Henry was the woman who read my, selected me without ever meeting me, and giving me the opportunity of a lifetime at Texas Tech, which eventually led to my chance to be at Washington. And she's taught me so much what she went through to try to have opportunities compared to what I've had to go through. I mean, she's had to champion things I can't even imagine. But the thing she taught me the most during my time at Tech was I was a 28-year-old intern, and I always had a seat at the table. And so I believe that I've taken that and will always take that and remind women that they deserve to always have a seat at the table.
Okay, thank you all panelists for sharing. We're now going to jump into individual questions. And yes, super excited because we have some incredible women in this group right here. So first we're gonna start with Erin. So a lot of people have heard about Title IX, but don't necessarily know what it means. So can you please give us an overview of Title IX and how it pertains to college sport?
Yeah, it's interesting when I think of Title IX, it's been in my life since I was born, and we're about to come up in June of next year, June of 22, on its 50th anniversary. And it's hard for me to imagine a time because I didn't know that. And back in 1972, the definition of what the actual legislation is that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in and denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So that means education, it means athletics, admission to institutions, housing at an institution, and then there's, of course, the sexual harassment part, which is it's sort of in its own category. But yeah, it is still a little shocking, I think, in the news today. There's some stuff that has come out of the women's basketball tournament, which, we have 64 teams down in San Antonio. We have 64 men's teams in Indianapolis. Tournaments haven't started yet because they've been quarantining and whatnot. And still in this day and age, there's discrepancies in what was provided for weight rooms at the sites. And it's all over Twitter and also in the swag bags. Everybody loves their swag, right? But it's a big deal. And it's frankly shocking to me that the NCAA committees and staff that put these tournaments together didn't recognize that, and it's tone deaf, and they're working on it. And they've obviously had the health and safety of the student athletes and getting all of that detail organized. But we're 50 years down the pipe, and it's not okay anymore. And so that's just kind of a sample of how Title IX is living in our everyday life. There are 3 pieces in college athletics that we need to be always working on. The first one is participation, and that women and men are having equal opportunities, right, to sport and participation. Number 2 is athletic scholarships and the financial aid that's available to our student athletes. And there's a formula. It's got to be equal to what your participation rate is. And then the third one that really touches what I just spoke about is called the laundry list. And there's 11 items on the laundry list that college athletic departments are supposed to be kind of constantly assessing, and it's constant vigilance, whether it's, are the locker rooms for all your teams, for your men and your women, equal? Are they getting the same type of meals when on the road? Are they traveling by the same method of travel? Whether that's, this bus has Wi-Fi and this bus doesn't. And so those are things that are very much in our everyday lives in college athletics. And I'll be frank, it's sometimes hard because it costs a lot of money, right? And at the University of Washington and Jen's department, we're committed to doing the right thing. And when we find something that's not equitable, then we get a plan, and go after it to put it in the place where it needs to be. So hopefully that answers a few questions on kind of how it works for us every day.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, that work is really important, and we're still working on it, making progress. So thank you. So as a follow-up, can you share what impact COVID-19 has had or will have in the future on women's sports?
Yeah, I think we've probably all seen over the course of this pandemic in the past year that there are a lot of institutions in all divisions that have cut programs. Probably more women's programs than men's. We are now seeing a lot of lawsuits coming for institutions that made those cuts, and with the gender equity piece as a component to that lawsuit. I don't know. We've kind of seen the cutting of programs slow down. I think just in terms of opportunity, the NCAA has allowed for extra seasons of eligibility, right? For first it was last year's spring sports, and then this year, of course, it was fall and winter sports as well. And so, I think we're all across the United States and all divisions going to see some roster bulging with participation rates here and there. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for people to manage in terms of that kind of first item I talked about equal participation opportunities and amount of folks on rosters. And then the other one that I just want to mention actually doesn't really have to do with COVID at all, but there's a lot of news out there, the name, image, likeness legislation and the Alston case that has been out there, and everything that's happening with that, how it's going to move forward. NIL is actually a really awesome opportunity for female athletes as well. It's not just for our, high profile football and men's basketball players. It's for everyone. And, we have a Sis Bates in softball, and I absolutely think she's going to be able to market herself if she chooses to do so. There's a lot of, young women out there who aspire to be Sis, or a Haley Herberg or a Sachi, it's an opportunity for everyone. So I actually think that the NIL piece is a pretty positive thing. And it just happens to be paralleling, right, with where we are in the pandemic and coming out of it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Erin. Before the passing of Title IX, women's coaches made up 90% of women coaching college sports. And today, less than 40% of women coach women's sports. So yeah, as you've had an incredible success throughout your career, what's it meant to be to you? What has it meant to you to be a student athlete and now a coach? And the second part to my question is, due to the decrease of women coaching women's sports since the passing of Title IX, what do you see as the benefits of being a woman coach coaching women?
When I was an athlete, a student athlete, it was before women's rowing was NCAA. And so, as I mentioned, my predecessors, they had, fought the initial battle for us to be able to do our sport, because rowing was not considered a sport for women. It was really hard for the guys to accept that women wanted to pull on an oar and make boats go as fast as possible across the water. They just didn't think that this was a sport that women should do. And when I came in the 80s, they were starting to get over it, but we still were having to, prove our way. And I mean, we were called a lot of things. I remember being called she-men, like it was unattractive for women to want to be athletes. So we had to overcome that, which I really love today, that you can be a strong woman and be an athlete and an equal. And I feel that for our student athletes today, they don't have to fight that. They appreciate that it happened. But I'm glad I was there, because now as a coach, I really appreciate what it took to get to where we are, and that we need to continue to honor what that means. But I think to answer the second part of your question, like, we've been fortunate in rowing. There are more and more women coaches coming into our sport, which I think is amazing. And I had a woman coach, and, women as coaches of women, like, we can have these conversations where it's okay to have fears and insecurities. I mean, you're going to question yourself in a sport like rowing. When you hit the third 500 and your legs and your lungs are on fire, you're going to question your very soul and if you can continue to do this, right? So how about the idea that if we can talk about these things up front and what it's going to take, like, I think that that's powerful. Being able to talk about our vulnerabilities is a strength. And that's something I feel like, that kind of communication with my athletes, it's so natural because we're all women. And I think the other piece of it too is, instead of striving for a perfect performance, we're striving to be, to create something extraordinary together. And when you do that, that's how you create amazing performances and incredible memories. And I think that that's a very female approach to it. And I love having that kind of relationship with my team.
Thank you, Yaz. It sounds like you had to overcome a lot and helped pave the way for women athletes today. So, and speaking of trailblazing and paving the way, Gertrude, our next panelist, did not only found SAAS, Student Athlete Academic Services, here at UW, but was also the first person to start this program anywhere in the country. So, and she did so right after the 1969 suspension of 4 Black male football players during a time of racial unrest in our country. So Gertrude, my 2 questions are, what are some of the biggest barriers that you had to overcome being one of the only women and people of color in the majority of the rooms you were in during your time at Washington? And how did you use that to propel your efforts in academic services and in recruiting?
Yes, all of that was true. Can you hear me? I saw something. When I started, it was because of the student athletes that had left. And so part of my job would be to ensure parents and students that they'd be safe at Washington, that we would be there in all efforts. They used to not even want to come into the Graves building because they felt so alienated. So we had to change all of that. And it wasn't easy being a woman. I was actually in a man's sports too, football mostly, at the time I started in the elite elitists on campus weren't the most helpful, but I feel good that I was able to stay there and to convince parents that their sons were safe. And then I was long enough to be in the recruiting for everyone, for all sports. And I admire, Jen, how diverse your staff is. That's really remarkable. So, yeah. Did I answer the question?
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that, Gertrude. Dr. Austin, thank you for being here. You were a Division I basketball student athlete who ultimately pursued a career and became a doctor. It's awesome to have someone who walked in our shoes working with us at your level. Unfortunately, there are some, but not a large number of student athletes who pursue a career in the medical field. What stigmas did you have to overcome as a student athlete who wanted to pursue a career in medicine?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying, like you said, a lot of stigma associated with student athletes. I think a lot of times when you're sitting down with advisors or you're building class schedules, there's the assumption that you're really just trying to get by. You're not trying to, think about your career. And I was, fortunate enough to have good advisors and people that were listening to me, but I was very forthcoming when I knew that I wanted to go into medicine, which was like probably from the age of 5, right? So this is something I always knew I wanted to do. So when I came to college, I was very upfront with my coaches. I was very upfront with, my academic advisors, my teachers, and said, schoolwork is my priority. I don't want to play basketball, my whole life. I don't want to make a career out of it, but I do want to play competitively at this level, but I am really wanting to focus on school as well, and just making that known. And then really like kind of backing that up with making sure you're getting your schoolwork done, right? Getting good grades and saying, see, here's my commitment to this, as well as, balancing also being a student athlete, right? So really having to use your resources. I think when I started, I got tutors before I needed tutors, right? I got lab partners, other people who, like a group of people that were willing to help with all the travel, because I played basketball. So this is a 2-semester sport. It's pretty long. And so just like really plugging in those resources early, and then like making my intentions known early, that I wasn't just going to be, skating by with classes, that I was going to be sitting in the front row. I was going to be engaged. And then people started to take me seriously. But I will tell you, it took probably till about junior year that people were taking it seriously, that I wanted to study medicine. And it was a lot of work, but you need a group of support. And I had, teachers that work with me in my travel schedule, with me doing lab work, chemistry lab or biology lab on Sundays when I was back in town from a road trip and things like that. So I think it's like asking for what you need early, and then using your resources to figure out what those needs might be, and plugging in before you need help. Because I think when you're doing pre-med and sort of some of the more challenging fields, you don't want to kind of be caught on your heels. You definitely want to prepare ahead of time.
That's awesome advice. Thank you. The next question that I have for you is, now that you've not only pursued but have become a doctor, how are you uniquely positioned to impact college athletics, but also the healthcare system at large?
Well, I tell you, I am just happy every single day coming in to work in college athletics. I mean, it's like being a student athlete all over again, except no running, right? I can run at my leisure. I work out at my leisure, but still get to be around an awesome group of kids and, young adults. And I really like this population a lot. So I think, me being a female in an athletic, in a training room, I mean, there aren't a lot of female doctors who are taking care of student athletes. I think similar to like Yaz was saying, I mean, when you're talking to student athletes and you're a female, certainly there's a whole just section of female problems, right, that male athletes don't have. But I also think you allow that vulnerability from your female athletes, and you allow them to trust you and kind of bond with you in a way that's different than with your male athletes. I will also say though, similarly, I think I was surprised when first starting in athletics with how much the male athletes tend to like having females around. And I will also say like male athletes of color specifically as well. One thing that I noticed and what some athletes have told me is that, having women in kind of balances things out a little bit, and it actually allows male athletes to show a little vulnerability as well, without feeling like they're going to get a lot of the backlash from saying, well, you're not, you're a male athlete, you have to act a certain way, right? I've had a lot of male athletes show vulnerability, and I don't know if that would happen with, a male physician. And some of them have said specifically they were uncomfortable having those conversations. So I think you add a unique dynamic in the training room, which I've appreciated, and the athletes have seemed to welcome me with open arms, which is great. I think to the healthcare system at large, I'm building so I still practice family medicine in the community. So I do family medicine throughout the week as well, and still having a connection with the community. There aren't a lot of Black female doctors in Seattle, really. And I've had people establish care with me saying specifically, hi, I've lived here a very long time and I've wanted to establish care with someone who shares a similar background to me, someone who I feel like can understand the, socioeconomic disparities and the social unrest that I've experienced. Because, as a family medicine doctor, I think, in sports medicine, certainly, I work on muscles and bones and joints and things, but I also work on mental health, and understanding the social structures of taking care of patients is also important. So I think I've had an opportunity to impact the greater healthcare system in that way, which has been really unique. The population in Seattle is different than my hometown population in Atlanta. So I've really found a unique niche, and I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Austin. And I actually think this is another really good transition, because I think a lot of the points you made about being a medical student and that also an athlete is similar to what STEM students face. So to transition to Elise, what does STEM mean, and what made you pursue a career in the STEM field?
So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And so I really got interested in STEM at a young age. I wanted to help people. My parents are older, and so I would always get asked, like, why doesn't this remote work? Or why do I not have Wi-Fi? Or can you show me how to show a picture on my phone, and things like that. And it was really difficult for me to understand, like, how something was so great for me and how it brought me closer to my friends was so difficult for someone else. So I chose the human-centered design engineering degree, and that really kind of bridges the gap between the very technical engineers and how we can kind of portray that and help regular, normal people understand. And so that's something that's always been near and dear to my heart. And then too, of course, I have an older brother, and he was in STEM, and anything he can do, I can do better. So I always took that on as well.
And also, how can we encourage girls and young women in STEM or other fields that are male dominated?
I think a big thing is just letting them know what's out there. When I first heard of engineering, I always thought it was like putting on some ugly boots, go digging around in dirt, but there's so many different options when it comes to engineering. I think last time I looked, there was like 12 different disciplines, whether it's bioengineering, chemical engineering, HCDE, mechanical. There's just so many different options. And one thing too is just letting them see you. I was at Mesa Day, which is a program that helps kids of color get interested in STEM. And I remember talking to a girl, and she's like, well, what do you do? And I told her my position, and she's like, wait, what? You're an engineer? And I was like, yeah, I am. And so just letting them see you and letting them know that, like, it may be difficult, but it is, if they put their mind to it, they can do anything they want.
Awesome. Thank you so much for shedding light on that, Elise. We're going to take a short moment to pause and ask that the attendees use the Q&A function to ask our panelists questions. Last but certainly not least, we've got our athletic director, Jen Cohen. Jen, you're one of six of the women athletic directors of all 65 Power 5 schools. Why is it important for women across all industries, but particularly in college sports, to be in leadership positions? And what do institutions and departments need to do to set women up for success to reach these roles?
I think there's only 5 too. Who's the 6th? Do we have a 6th now that I don't know about? I'm going to be excited. We're working on one at Duke. That's all I have to say. But I would say that as you listen to all these women talk about their leadership and their influence, the common theme is that all the women on this panel have positively impacted the lives of other people through their leadership. And so when I think about why is it so important just to our community and to our world, before I even cover the athletic side, it's there is a false perception about what good leadership looks like. And it's based on traditional attributes that are based on what people consider to be male. And so to me, the most important thing about women being in leadership is that we can break that perception. That's the most important thing. And also that we get to do it in an authentic way. No person should be put in a box for how they're going to live their life. And that's why I love college athletics, because I think we can give our students a platform to try to develop themselves in all aspects and find a way to be who they really are. And so we've got to tackle this in our communities, because otherwise we're going to stay on this vicious cycle of leadership only being this way, which has not gotten us to where we need to be for our communities. So that's my passion. In athletics, I think athletics, college athletics, is the most behind when it comes to equality, whether that's related to gender, whether that's related to race. It's the most kind of old school model of any industry. Pro teams have become much more progressive. Other industries are becoming much more progressive. But college sports is really holding on to very, very, very old traditional values that are not about where we're going as a future. And yet here we are serving a diverse population of student athletes, which is the whole reason why this athletic department, all athletic departments exist. And so I'm like so proud of the growth that we are having in college sports. How do we get there with women is like, we have to like change that perception, but also be flexible in what we think that opportunity looks like for women. So I'll give you a great example of this. And I don't want to embarrass you, Erin, but like Erin is a superstar. And she was an athlete someplace else. She ran the rowing association, but maybe the first ever female to ever do that, right, Erin, with your role with rowing. And she has a son, Declan, who's the light of her life, who is also the light of as well. And I want Erin to be able to live her dreams as a senior level administrator in our department, and also live her dreams as being a mom. So we'll have, like pre-COVID, we'll have a donor board of advisors meeting, and that's Erin's morning with Declan. And Declan will come in and sit in color or watch a video in the corner while we're sitting with a bunch of old white boosters who don't even understand what it means that a woman would even be working, let alone having her child at the office. Oh my gosh. So to me, like, we have to adapt and create opportunities where women can be their full selves. Women are the caregivers still. In many cases, women are caring for their parents still. So there has to be a flexibility to that. And then I think the second thing is, I really believe that women need to have people telling them sometimes that they can do this. I cannot tell you how many times I have to talk women into taking a risk for an opportunity. And it's really easy for us to say that all the barriers are on the outside. We create our own barriers sometimes too. So we have to have the courage to inspire women and tell them that they can do it, and then give them the seat at the table. So I'm really fired up about this topic right now.
Thank you, Jen. That's awesome. So next, I'm going to ask a question and have Gertrude and Erin both answer it. So in your perfect world, what does the world look like for women in 50 years? So Gertrude, you can go ahead.
Sitting at every table, not having to deal with sexism so much. I really struggled with that a lot. And there was no place to go. Now that's not true. Women are not just sitting back and accepting that. But the perfect world, the women will be everywhere.
That's a great answer, because I was going to say the same thing, that we're still not having the same conversations, right? But I will add to that I want to see in the future a space where women, can speak, we're fortunate in our department. We have a lot of direct and honest women, starting with Jen, in how we share with our coaches. We have a lot of transparency, and we have the freedom and confidence to do that here at Washington, but that is not the same everywhere else. And I would like for the future for women everywhere to be able to speak their mind, say what they think and why, and not be labeled perhaps with a bad word or something like that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. It's important that while we're trailblazing that we take time to take care of ourselves. Yaz, Jen, and Dr. Austin, what do you do to practice self-care?
I promised myself that every day I'm going to find 30 minutes to do something physical, right? And so we're an early morning sport. So on those days when it's really early, sometimes I have to get creative. This last year, we've been erging in Husky Stadium, and I found out that the ramps were a great way to get in a workout while coaching my team. So I do two things. One was exercise and practice gratitude, right? So my routine would be to walk up the ramp. Eventually I got to jogging up the ramps. It's pretty hard. And then I'd get up to the top and I'd take a picture of our amazing rowing venue. And I would tell myself how grateful I was that our team got to come back at the beginning of the school year and actually train throughout this year and be together. So, and then I'd go back down the other ramp, coach up everybody, go down the row, and then do another lap. So sometimes you got to get creative, but, and I would say this to everyone, I mean, you got to find a way to take care of your body, because that's the way that upstairs keeps functioning too. And we can keep doing this for a really long time.
I'll definitely second exercise. I think we're all like, former student athletes, or a lot of us. So like we like to keep moving. And I think probably my favorite type of exercise is probably mountaineering. Like finding the tallest mountain I can find and climbing it. I think you are forced into sort of a meditative state at a certain altitude. So you really have to focus on breathing and really like kind of losing all other things and just kind of focusing on yourself, which I really like, because there's a lot of distractions, obviously, with the jobs we have. And so just being with yourself and being dialed in. I like that. I also do a lot of reflective writing as well. So just reflecting on my day, my life, my experiences, that sort of thing. I've really enjoyed that as well.
On my next, it's a full-time job to take care of yourself to the level that you deserve. I really believe that you have to create multiple rituals. So obviously exercise, sleep, nutrition, filling yourself with, surrounding yourself with people that support you and make you better and kind of stimulate you intellectually. For me, of all the things that I practice to try to be my whole and best self, the mental aspect of managing the stress and pressure of the work and the responsibilities of that to family has been my greatest challenge and is my biggest opportunity and my greatest barrier. So like Dr. Austin, I actually do a lot of writing. Writing is a very important part of my morning. So journaling, I write poems, I write letters to people that I'll never mail. I do gratitude work, meditation, breathing exercises, because each one of us is different. So I think formulating your plan for your care really needs to be authentic to you and you being honest with yourself about where your gaps are. So for me, it's stress, pressure, anxiety. I have a major fine line with anxiety. And so the mental work that I do combined with other things is what has really helped me manage the pace and the life that I'm living and all of us on this call are living.
Thank you. So our next question is going to be for Elise and then Gertrude. Why is it important to look back at history from a female perspective, and how is that different from the way we typically look at history?
For me, I think it's very important to look back from a woman's perspective, because like what Jen was saying earlier, it's very unique, right? It's very different, taking into account all the different things that they have done for us is just one thing that also fills me with gratitude and keeps pushing me forward. It's like we've all been put in this place because someone motivated us. Yes, we had a lot to do with it ourselves, but you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and just taking a moment to recognize that and looking back at that and seeing the sacrifices others have made for you is very important and kind of propels you forward too.
Awesome. Thank you for those incredible answers. I've got a question for everyone on the panel, starting with Yaz. We'll go Gertrude, Dr. Austin, Erin, Elise, then Jen. The question is, success never comes without challenge. What is one piece of advice that you wish you could impart on your younger self?
Am I first?
Don't expect somebody else to do it for you. Like, you're going to have to fight every step of the way for what you want, and for ourselves as women, and for our future. I wore this. I thought I got this shirt from a student athlete on our team, and I thought if there was ever a place I could wear it, it's here on this call. But I thought about this too, like the concept of I could wear this shirt and I could be super militant and say, we're arrived, and screw the rest of you, we're going to take it all over. Or I could be like, this is an exciting time where we are coming into our own, and the future for women is so bright, but we're going to have to fight for every step of it and keep working for it. And I think the other part of it too is to keep a sense of humor, not about our cause, because it is a very worthy and important cause, but just the concept of enjoy the journey and enjoy the fact that we have one another and we are natural collaborators. It is our way. That is what we do. And by supporting one another, that's how we're going to create an equal world where the glass ceiling is something we refer to in past tense. And we're no longer having a conversation about equality in pay for gender and race. But we're going to have to keep working for it. I thought when I was younger that by the time I was 55, we'd be there, and we're not. So it's going to take all of us continuing to push for this. And if we are willing to fight for it, that's the only way that we're going to get there. And we're going to have to stick together to do it.
I can go next, I guess. Is that question still out there?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I would agree. I think resilience is going to be key. I think the other thing to remember is just because you work hard, just because you are putting a lot of effort in, doesn't mean things will always go exactly the way you want them to go, and expecting that they won't. I think that was probably the biggest thing to understand, is just expecting that it won't go the way you want, and understanding how to be resilient and work around that, and continuing to have basically workarounds until you get what you want, and being resilient in that way, I think is very important, and not to get discouraged, and to know that you'll have to go out and take it, because no one owes you anything, but you have to got to keep pushing. So I totally agree with Yaz on that.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Austin and Yaz. Gertrude.
Imagine being a woman in the 70s and the 80s, the sexism you have to face, even among your own people, which says how tough we are. We are so tough if we're determined, and if we make a commitment to make life better for everybody, we will be on top forever. But it was really a struggle in the 70s and the 80s. But I was tough. That song about Hear Me Roar, I was not going anywhere. I had made a commitment to a lot of families, and I was going to be there to carry out that commitment.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Gertrude. That's incredible. Erin.
Yeah, I think I would tell my younger self to enjoy the journey and to recognize the milestones that come along the way, because I think when you have success along the way, sometimes you're just thirsting and expecting it, and you're working hard for it. But I would have liked to have had a little bit more of a 180 view, as opposed to just a full steam ahead view.
Thank you for that advice, Erin. Elise.
I think for me, it would be resilience is key. Like you mentioned, success doesn't come out without challenges, and knowing that and expecting that, and then just being able to take a moment and breathe and not be okay for a second, and then come back and find your core, find your balance, and be able to push forward is really important. I would probably tell myself like, hey, it's okay to go cry in a corner and figure it out and come back and then get it done. I would say I wish like I could tell my younger self that that was okay. And just always push forward, and people are watching you. I have nieces and nephews that look up to me, and so just having that and realizing that there are people that are watching you and rooting for you, even though if it doesn't seem like it, that's there for you too.
That's really good advice. Thank you, Elise. Jen.
Spent a lot of years in my life trying to please other people and trying to be something for everybody else versus being myself. And I think if there's anything I could tell myself back in those years was that confidence is built, and anybody can build their confidence, and it's built from the inside out, not the outside in. So stop seeking approval, stop, trying to get things that are short-lived that aren't really about yourself, like really go inside out for yourself. And I really credit some of the amazing coaches and student athletes. Yaz, you're one of those people to me who in the environment that we're in has taught me, and I think has taught all of us that get to work in this, how to develop our own skills and confidence like that. So yeah, I'm just grateful I've even been able to learn those lessons, but I know I would have had happier years before now if I would have known that sooner.
Okay, I think if everyone's answered that one, I have one more question for Jen, Elise, and then Gertrude. What can the men listening do to support and empower women? So Jen, you can go first.
I mean, this one's like near and dear to my heart because I think manhood and how we treat men is an important part of the solution too. I think Dr. Austin mentioned this earlier in her comments that a lot of time men are put in a box as well, expected to behave a certain way, and that does not develop them into their full selves. And a lot of times that can lead to things like discrimination or violence or even self-sabotaging behaviors from men. And so I'm a mother of 2 sons. And I feel lucky because they notice sexism sometimes even more than I do now because I've had to deal with it for so long. So I would just say love and respect the women in your life as equals and want for them everything they've ever wanted to be for them, not from what you want from them. They're 2 very different things.
Thank you, Jen. So yeah, Gertrude, what can the men listening do to support and empower women?
Continue to be respectful, but know that women can do everything. And women, I think we're really more humble, and that's why we're tougher, stronger. We fool them. But I was very fortunate. I had a lot of young men in my life that really did give me respect and honor. So men need to continue to do that, and we'll go far.
Thank you. And Elise, you can go next.
I definitely agree with what they said, but also just support whatever that looks like. If you want to be a burger flipper, if you want to be in tech, if you want to be in medicine, I think just having the space to be able to talk to someone and have them accept that and then figure out, okay, that's great for you. How do I help you? And just asking those questions. A lot of people want to just solve answers and be like, yes, I'm supporting you, but they don't take the time to really listen to what you need or where you want to go. And so I would just say, listen first and offer that support.
Thank you so much for sharing that advice. I've got one final question for the whole panel, starting with Dr. Austin. The question is, at the beginning of our time together, you shared a little bit about one of the many women who've helped you get to where you are. Now we're going to shift to each one of you and ask, how do you use your experience and your inspiration of others to continue to open up doors for women in the future?
So I think it's using our roles, and as Jen mentioned, we all have our various platforms. So reaching out, first of all, making ourselves seen and hopefully being a part of a community and group that is allowing you to be seen. And then reaching out, doing talks like this, right? Being on these types of panels. You know, when I'm in the training room talking to my student athletes, getting to know them, branching out into the community and when I'm working. So all of us have very unique positions. And I think just instead of just saying, cool, we're excited, we're happy with where we are, right? Just thinking about the next generation, because ultimately me getting here was easier because of the generations before me. And if I can make the next generations, you know, trip to wherever they want to be a little easier by reaching out, by mentoring, by seeking out those relationships, I think that would be awesome, you know, because in a way we really should all be working together as women to bring the next generation closer to our ultimate goal and living that dream that everyone has talked about already and what that looks like, what that world looks like. And it's our job to do that. And we are in the position where we can. So it's making sure we're doing those things. And that's mentally, that's support, that's financially, that's, you know, checking all those boxes.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's have Erin, what is your advice?
Well, I would say Jen and I get a lot of requests to have conversations with grad students and undergrads about how did we get into this industry, right? And I never turn those conversations down. I always feel like it's me kind of paying back the opportunities that were presented to me in those conversations that were happening. And sometimes I feel like I'm in this cycle of like, I'm just like, there's like times of the year, right, where there's tons of people that are coming for that kind of advice. And how did you get to be where you are? But I don't ever turn them down, even when it gets too stacked up, because it's really important to help people understand what this business is about and pave the way for them to move forward.
Thank you, Erin. Yes.
To be able to grow as women and as humans, you have to get uncomfortable and you have to be able to stretch. And Jen talked about this earlier, but the concept of believe, you know, self-belief, and that you are up for the challenge and to take the chance, even if you're not 100% sure that you can do it. And then for us as teachers, and the message for them as future teachers and leaders, to be compassionate, because if we are compassionate and good to one another, then we can truly be unified and tackle any obstacle together. And that way we're in it together.
Thank you for sharing, Yaz. Elise?
I think for me, it's leading by example, making sure that you're seen and also giving back whenever you can. MESA, which is Math, Engineering, Science Achievement Program, is one of my favorite things to do. Just going there, talking to the kids, helping them with their projects, tutoring, things like that, just letting them know that you're there to support them. You're just another resource for them, and just making yourself seen in the community and giving back in any way you can. It doesn't have to be directly related to, hey, I want to make you become an engineer. It's like, no, I'm here for you. You have to take math. I can help you with that, no matter what you want to be. So just making sure that you're there and visible for them.
That's great advice. Thank you, Elise. Jen?
Well, all the comments already shared sure really resonate with me. I would say maybe just to add first, for those of us that are in leadership that have the ability to influence, that we have the courage to stay in it. That's the first responsibility I think that we all have, no matter how hard it gets. I'm involved in a number of different ways to provide mentorship. And I don't think of mentorship as just like an informational interview. I think mentorship is like being direct and honest and like investing time, connections and resources and ideas for others, you know, using your network to really, really leverage somebody else's growth. And then I think Yaz hit on this. It's a kind of, for me, it's a combination of collaboration and grace. One of the most empowering things I've seen over the last 10 years is that women are finally helping women. And they're also not labeling each other for how they're doing it. You know, it's like there's just genuinely women that are out there that are trying to help other women grow. And that includes accountability. It includes having high aspirations, but we don't have to climb over each other anymore. There's more than one seat now. And for me, I'm 51 and I can't even imagine, Gertrude, you know how much I love you and admire you. I cannot imagine what you've done for us. Just so much respect for you. And I know I came in, kind of later in your career and we still had this where like there could only be one woman in the room. That's why in this longer discussion, but Erin and I talk about this all the time for the senior women's administrator role. Erin's a deputy AD too, because there shouldn't only be one, just saying that there's just one senior women's administrator. And so I feel like there's been a lot of progress, but I think we really need to challenge ourselves right now with all that's going on in the world and not have selective inclusion. And women are the ones that can figure this out. So we need to love each other no matter what, and not love each other from our own lens. Try to love each other from the other person's lens. And I just think we've made so much progress as women. I'm so encouraged. And so those are the things that I know that I needed to, and that I hope other women in leadership do too.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Jen. That was really awesome. Gertrude, last but definitely not least.
Well, the thing that I pride myself in is that I was aware, I was available, I was approachable, and I was safe. And I think those things survived me, and the students that I came in contact understood that. So for men, same thing, aware, available, approachable, safe.
Wow, what a wonderful conversation we have had today. Compassionate, having courage, just the list goes on. I know in my group chat on the side, we were just talking about how we've had chills during this conversation. We've teared up. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you panelists and our student athlete moderators for joining us, for giving us a space to celebrate the wonderful things that women are doing in history and in our society and in college athletics. So happy Women's History Month. Everyone be well, stay safe, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
And go Dogs.